My name is Cherry Blossom Spielman, and this is my story. I was born right outside of Washington, D.C. when all the cherry blossoms were in bloom. Even though my parents had a different name for me, when my father rode by and saw the beautiful flowers in bloom, he asked my mom if she would mind naming me Cherry Blossom, and so they did. My father was an officer in the Army Medical Corps, so by the time I had finished elementary school, I had already lived in 8 states and gone to 7 schools. Having those experiences of making friends and making connections and then getting uprooted and having to move again was very stressful for me. Even though it played out as a gift in my later years, during that time, not so much. Right as I was getting ready to enter middle school, my father retired from the military and we settled in Orlando, Florida. And during my time in middle school, a significant event that happened to me was that I was given a career test. And the results of that test really inspired me because it was already showing some of the passions that were emerging inside of me. There were 3 careers that really stood out as those top 3. The first one was psychologist, and I was already just enjoying and loving helping people solve their problems, even at that young age, and talking to my friends, and they easily told me the things that were going in their life. The second was minister, and I had already established a very deep faith. The third one was forest ranger, and I had been a Girl Scout already for many years, and I loved nature, I loved outside, I loved animals, I loved camping. So any of these 3 professions fit me perfectly by that time. Another aspect of myself that was emerging was my entrepreneurial spirit, and in 1980, I was the youngest Avon representative in the country at that time. I was 16 years old. I ended up selling Avon from the years of 16 to 22. So during that time, I was even elevated to President's Club status. So whenever we look back and we think about the times whenever I was struggling, moving, and having to interact and live outside my comfort zone, and now I was interacting with these wonderful women and listening to their stories, I felt like it was a foundational growth in me, as later on I would be running my own private practice, running my own therapy farm as a licensed clinical therapist, a licensed vibrational sound therapist, a life coach, a best-selling author, a motivational speaker, and an educator. When I began college, I felt that because of that career testing I had taken, I was already on a path and knew what I wanted to study, which was psychology. During my last 2 years in undergraduate, I actually worked for 3 psychologists in their private practice. When I was interviewing for the job as their office manager, they gave me a personality inventory. And then whenever they went over that inventory with me, they told me that I had gotten the job because I had the skills and the experience to do the job. But the personality type that evolved from that testing showed I would be a great therapist. During that time working in their office, they actually mentored me and trained me how to run my own private practice. That experience with them was invaluable to my career a few years later, starting my own private practice. I then moved to Philadelphia to attend Villanova University, which was one of the top counseling programs in the country at the time. So I felt very blessed to be a part of this program. I was learning from the best of the best. I got a stellar education and training, and I think that's made all the difference in my career. Also, as part of the program, we had to be involved in our own therapy, individual and group therapy, kind of to experience what it felt like to sit on the other side of the couch, so to speak. We were also extensively trained in self-care, and I actually have developed a workshop for professionals on self-care as an ethical obligation. After I finished graduate school at Villanova University, I returned home to Orlando, Florida, and started my family, and brought into the world my now young adult children, Cassandra Hope, Stephen Forrest, and Aaron Christian. I also started my career as a pediatric therapist with hospice, working with children who were terminally ill or chronically ill and their families. I also co-facilitated a widowed young group, and I counseled adults and children who were grieving or experiencing complicated grief. What is more present than death and dying and grief? I was asked so many why questions. Why would God allow my innocent young child to die? Why would I be dying? Why would my family member be dying? What does it feel like to die? Where do we go when we die? These were asked with such gravity that I felt like I needed to take the time to honestly go inside myself and answer these questions so that I could give a comforting answer, or at least a compassionate, I don't know. During this time, I also heard so much about regret, the stories over and over, and it truly changed me. In my early 20s, I learned about vision boards and the power of vision boards, and from that time, I had always created an annual vision board. But during that time and after that time, the 30 years since I have worked for hospice, as I have done my annual vision boards, they have had such clarity and such purpose, and they really act as a catalyst to help me reduce those feelings of regret. The wisdom that I gained working with people who were dying and then trying to live in a way that minimized regret was not only pivotal to how I lived my life, it also changed how I did therapy. So whether I was acting in my role as therapist or life coach, whether I was helping someone through issues or traumas or circumstances, or helping someone elevate to the next level of success, I was also encouraging them to really get to know themselves, to know who they were, so they could create a vision for themselves that was based on passion and purpose, and also help them reduce those feelings of regret. About 20 years ago, I was getting ready to speak to a group about goal setting. I was actually going to be speaking more about creating vision than goal setting. I was one of two speakers. The other one was actually a vice president of a Fortune 500 company. So they had placed us both in the same room while we were waiting, and as he came in, I noticed that he was carrying something called a Franklin Planner. And a Franklin Planner is a life planner, kind of time management system, and I could see that he had been using it well. I looked at him and I said, you know, in my early years, I always wanted a Franklin Planner. And he told me that he had gotten to a place in his life where his goal setting had become so stressful to him that it was starting to create anxiety and give him burnout. I could completely relate to that because years earlier, I had felt that same burnout and that same anxiety, feeling like I was living my life just checking off the boxes of what I had accomplished and the tasks that I was doing. And I had found a better way, and that better way was creating vision instead of trying to complete a lot of tasks. And in that vision, the difference is instead of creating anxiety and stress, it brings balance and joy. When I was 4 and my brother was 3, my brother passed away from a trauma that he had experienced at birth. Of course, it was completely devastating to my parents. My father forevermore became a workaholic until he retired and became the best grandfather on the planet. And my mother was forever grieving the death of her precious baby boy. During that time of devastation, it created in me the wounds of abandonment and unworthiness that so many of us struggle with for so many different reasons. I let those wounds internally define me for many years. And as I started into my own healing process of healing and re-healing and unhealing and healing again, I came to understand that I wasn't alone and that I was worthy because I was a beloved child. I was a beloved child of the divine, not of religion, but of the one who tells me I'm worthy and the one who tells me I'm not alone. I am a beloved child of the universe. I am a beloved child of humanity. And I am a beloved child of my parents who love me in any and all the ways that they can, even in spite of their own wounds. If I could go back and tell my 20-year-old self something, the message I would give this young woman who is wounded and yet desperately wanting to help other people heal and impact the world is this: you are not alone and you have never been alone because you are a beloved child. And anytime you feel alone or you feel lonely, instead of looking outward, look inward to that universal love that is in you and all around you. That is where you will find your source of comfort and peace and love and acceptance. What drives me to keep doing what I do are those aha moments that I see my clients have as they are healing from their past, they are accepting fully the present that they're in, and they are creating a vision of their wildest dreams and their most wonderful passions and purpose for their future.